Hey everyone, before I continue on with this video, I know it's been a pretty interesting past couple months or so, but I'm happy to let y'all know that I'm still hanging in there, doing everything I can to move forward. And I greatly appreciate everyone for the support, especially those who have donated to the Meal Train fundraiser. It's been really hard since those 2 months, and my heart goes out to every one of y'all. But yeah, that's kind of where things are at right now. I think it's kind of funny how ever since we hit this goal on Patreon long ago, they decided to remove the goals feature entirely, but that's probably for the better in my case, as I am going to be a bit more selective about the content I produce going forward, though I still want to keep things interesting. So yeah, as you'd guessed from the title, I'll be doing a video series that goes over unmade Godzilla films. Basically, how this is going to go is that with each installment of this video series, there will be a poll in the link in the description where you, the audience, gets to vote on which projects you'd like to see me cover. Each poll is going to be up for 7 days after each video is posted, and afterwards I'll pick the top 3 to 5 for the next one, depending on the amount of coverage and information that's out there. Especially when you consider that there are multiple projects that lead to another. So in actuality, I'll probably end up talking about a good handful of projects in a single video, but that's basically how it's going to go. Now, the selections you'll see in this first video were exclusive to my channel members and Patreon supporters, but after this, every poll is going to be public for everyone to access and vote. And with that said, the Godzilla franchise, running for as long as it has been, there's bound to be some things that get lost to time, or simply fade away as slivers of them are only present in other Godzilla movies. Kind of like how Kamen Rider Gaia kind of served as the basis for plenty of Kamen Rider shows, but ultimately never came to be. Or how Ultraman's End project was never fully realized. Though you'd be surprised at just how many unmade Godzilla projects exist. Or I guess don't in this case, because they never happened. In the past, I've already covered every film with a little bit of their development history in a fairly dated video series by today's standards, so why not talk about the ones that never came to fruition, featuring my face, of all things. And before I get started, I just want to say that if you ever want to know more about these types of films, I highly recommend picking up the big book of Japanese giant monster movies, The Lost Films by John LeMay. I mean, this is a pretty thick book, and it's like a whole treasure trove of information. John LeMay has all sorts of these types of books. There's even one where he talks about unmade King Kong films, a bunch of Jawsploitation films, lots of films in the monster movie subgenre. So yeah, definitely pick it up. All right, now let's get into it. As we all know, Godzilla is no stranger to the world of animation. Whether it's the Hanna-Barbera cartoon, cameos in Dragon Ball and Urusei Yatsura, the '98 cartoon, the Netflix trilogy, or Singular Point, I mean, Godzilla in animation is just a no-brainer. It's not anything new, but if done right, it can be pretty impressive. So in 1987, Variety reported that Henry Saperstein, the man behind the distribution of the Showa series and other Toho sci-fi films, was collaborating with Toho on an animated Godzilla feature scheduled for a release the following year. Basically, how it would have gone is that pre- and post-production would have been held in the US under UPA, while Toho handled everything in between in Japan. All while Godzilla vs. Biollante was in development. Though for whatever reason, the movie got scrapped. Tragic, I know. Personally, I'd like to see more animated Godzilla, as I always felt the big guy could really thrive in it. Though it looks like we won't be waiting long for another animated outing anytime soon. If we ever get word on Singular Point Season 2, that is. Okay, so this one has a long history, so I'll try to make it quick and dirty. Godzilla 2012 goes way back into the 70s after the release of Godzilla vs. Hedorah, where director Yoshimitsu Banno wanted to do a sequel. However, producer Tomoyuki Tanaka wasn't quite happy with how the film came out, and a sequel was quickly off the table, despite that little stinger at the end. Banno still wanted to go for a pro-environmental message with this sequel, and as opposed to having an alien fight Godzilla Godzilla, he would have fought a mutant starfish instead. I can just imagine Godzilla fighting Starro. And in case this concept sounds familiar, it eventually found its way into Rebirth of Mothra too. It wouldn't be until 2000 where Bono would make some adjustments to his pitch after seeing that Godzilla 2000 didn't perform too well in the US. He felt that the American market has yet to see what Godzilla can really do for it. So after some touch-ups, Bono had Godzilla vs. Deathla, or Godzilla 3D to the max, a 40-minute short film which he would pitch around. Bono managed to snag a $25 million budget with production planned for March of 2006. Then in 2007, Kerner Productions announced their involvement with special effects as production was then moved to 2008. However, Legendary Pictures came in and demanded a feature-length project. Unfortunately, this was considered unlikely with what they were working with, so 3D to the max ended up not happening. And there was also an idea for a Gamera 3D in the mix, which also ended up not happening. Although this would lead us to 2010 when a new American Godzilla film was announced by Legendary Pictures with Yoshimitsu Banno credited as executive producer. Obviously, this would be the 2014 film everyone knows about. But the original script by David Callahan and David S. Goyer and revised by Max Borenstein was a bit different. Originally, Godzilla was supposed to be encased in ice, like in King Kong vs. Godzilla. Muto's had more insect-looking designs. The opening scene in the Philippines was actually in Siberia. Dr. Serizawa's name was actually Professor Honda, which I'm sure you can guess what that's a shout out to. Dr. Graham was nowhere to be present. Oh, and get this. Ford and Elle were actually siblings in this one, really not beating the Ultimate Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch allegations there. As for Godzilla, he was originally supposed to be much taller, standing at 600 feet, and believe it or not, actually had a burning form that was meant to be shown in the climax. Also, I kid you not, there is a line from Ford that refers to Godzilla as, and I quote, "King of the fucking monsters." Do what you want with that info. Now we're getting into the more infamous ones. Basically, after the distribution rights for Godzilla Raids Again were acquired by Harry Reibnick, Edward Barrison, and Paul Schreibman, they hired writers Ib Melchior and Ed Watson to come up with a new screenplay for the movie, because they didn't like it. This 1957 draft was known as the Volcano Monsters, and would have basically done what Saban did to Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger. They were going to shoot original footage at ABPT Pictures Corps with special effects scenes from Godzilla Raids Again spliced in, kinda like Power Rangers. They even went as far as to commission new suits for Godzilla and Anguirus from Toho. But ABPT Pictures Corps would eventually see bankruptcy, and as it went down, so did the Volcano Monsters. Easily one of the most well-known unmade Godzilla projects, which happens to be attached to one of the best films in the entire franchise. Before GMK had Mothra and King Ghidorah, there was Varan and Anguirus, with Baragon still in the picture. This makes a lot of sense considering that Mothra in the film emerges from a lake, like Varan in his debut, while Ghidorah coming from ice is a bit of a nice callback to Raids Again, even going as far as to have his heads look like Varan. Other than that, the general plot is almost the same, though this draft actually had the Gotengo from Atragon. But before this draft, director Shusuke Kaneko was originally going to do a Godzilla vs. Kamacuras film as the franchise's 25th entry. But Toho decided to go in a different direction as we got Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla directed by Masaki Tezuka. But Kaneko wasn't done yet. His next pitch, unofficially titled Godzilla vs. M, featured Godzilla fighting Peter Lorre. Just kidding. M is an astronaut who suffers from a mutation that leads to him becoming a giant alien creature. So basically Jamila from Ultraman if you upped the drama and body horror. As cool as this was, Kaneko felt it would have been too dark for a holiday film. Remember, Godzilla movies were coming out during the holidays at this time. So then he opted for what would be Godzilla, Varan, Baragon, and Anguirus, and eventually GMK. So remember when we all thought Shin Godzilla wasn't going to get a sequel? Turns out that was partially true. Around the time of Shin Godzilla's release, director Hideaki Anno had an idea of a Shin Godzilla sequel titled Shin Godzilla's Counterattack, a nod to Godzilla's Counterattack, aka Godzilla Raids Again. which was allegedly to be helmed by Shinji Higuchi, who actually received the draft as a gift. Basically, whereas Shin Godzilla was more of a modernization of the original in a different context, this one would have been more in spirit of the Champion Festival film, so everything from All Monsters Attack to Terror of Mechagodzilla. But alas, the project never came to be, as Ono admits it would have cost too much time and money. But ever since Godzilla's release, Toho's Chief Godzilla Officer, wow what a title, Keiji Ota, said he wanted to do a World of Godzilla, which was essentially a cinematic universe of sorts. Though it seems that idea has been scrapped, as we're getting a new Godzilla movie coming out this year from Toho, directed by Takashi Yamazaki. Anyways, that's all I have for now. Don't forget to check the poll in the description and vote on which projects y'all would like to see get covered next. Big shout out to my channel members and my Patreon supporters for their support. Thank you guys for your support, and I'll see y'all next time.